Hey guys, so we are going to jump into Esther chapter 6 today. If you haven't watched the other videos, make sure you watch those first. They do go in order. I'll have all of the notes linked in the description box as well as all the tools I'm using. And let's just hop right into this. Chapter 6 is one of my favorite chapters in this story, and I'm super excited to break it down. So, verse 1. That night the king could not sleep, so he ordered the book of Chronicles, the records of his reign, to be brought to him and read to him. It was found a record in there that Mordecai had exposed two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this? The king asked. Nothing has been done for him, his attendants answered. Alright, you guys. So, this is a chapter where we really see God's hand. Anytime that you see luck or coincidence in this chapter, just think they're pointing to God. The king can't sleep. Probably God's doing. So he asks to read a very specific book. God's doing. The one page that they happen to read is about Mordecai overhearing his assassination plot. And the king instantly just wants to honor the man who saved his life. So he asks how, if at all, Mordecai was rewarded, and he wasn't at the time. Again, God's doing. So if you were thinking earlier in the chapter, it seemed weird that the king didn't honor him in any way. All of it was leading up to this. So then the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to speak with the king about impaling Mordecai on the pole he had set up for him. His attendants answered, "Haman is standing in the court." "Bring him in," the king ordered. When Haman entered, the king asked him, "What should be done for the man that the king delights to honor?" So the king needs someone to help reward Mordecai. The king isn't going to go meet with Mordecai himself, but no one else but Haman is in the court. And the reason Haman is in the court is because he's going to talk to the king about killing Mordecai. So it can be easy to see how God's hand is in things when things are going well, or when we look back at the situation, but remembering that he's in control can be harder when it feels like everything's falling apart. So as part of this, I want to point to Romans 8:28 for a reminder. And then also, Haman's inflated ego becomes his own trap, which we will see God's hand in. So the king asks, how should I honor this man? So let's stop there for a minute and make some notes. So Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So I love that in relation to Esther, because we really do see God's hand in this as he is kind of orchestrating this whole thing, and it's all coming together. So, when Haman entered, the king asked him what should be done for the man that the king delights to honor. Haman thought of himself. Who is there that the king would rather honor than me? And this is just straight his ego speaking. So he answered the king, for the man the king delights to honor, have them bring a royal robe the king has worn, and a horse the king has ridden, one with royal crest placed on his head. Then let the robe and the horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man the king delights to honor, and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man that the king delights to honor. So, Haman is obviously thinking that this is all going to be for him, and so he wants all of his ultimate desires to be realized. And while these are silly and childish things, Haman wants nothing more than for people to approve of him. He's not seeking God, he's seeking approval from the world. And Haman is a perfect example here of how our heart's desires can be so wrong and backwards when God isn't at the center of our focus. So then let's jump to verse 10. Go at once, the king commanded Haman. Get the robe and the horse, and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended. Can you imagine Haman's face in this moment? What he must have felt as he realized what he was about to have to do. He basically just gave Mordecai his ultimate dream, and not only does Mordecai get to do all those things that Haman wants to do, but Haman is the one that has to help him do that. a man that he was ready to kill is basically taking a spot of honor, and Haman is just going to be publicly humiliated. So Haman got the robe and the horse. He robed Mordecai and led him on horseback through the city streets, proclaiming before him, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." This is just Haman's worst nightmare, and as you can imagine, he doesn't really react well to this. So let's make some notes and then we'll jump to that part. Okay, so verse 12. After Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman rushed home with his head covered in grief, and he told his wife and all of his friends everything that had happened to him. His advisors and his wife said to him, "Since Mordecai, before whom your downfall had started, is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. You will surely come to ruin." While they were still talking with him, the king's eunuch arrived and hurried Haman away to the banquet Esther had prepared. So Haman goes home as though he's in mourning. He's mourning like he had lost the death of a loved one. His entire plan has essentially been ruined, and he has hit rock bottom in his mind because God's plan was bigger than his own. His wise men and his wife all know that this is the end of his plan and that no good can come from the next few days. So while Haman is still reeling from the day's events, he is called to Esther's feast, and the rest of God's plan is to unfold before him. Okay, so this chapter ends leading right into chapter 7, so that video will be up soon. Thank you guys for walking through that with me. As always, if you have any questions, let me know. All the links will be down in the description box, and you can also access all of the notes and study questions from all of these studies. So that is all for now. I'll see you in the next one.